www.redhotradio.fm. redhotradio.fm.
Revolutionary Pan-Africanism calls on us to unite and forge a definitive struggle against neocolonialism, forward to one unified socialist Africa. And so now we have our keynote address that's going to be done by one of the members of the All-African People's Revolutionary Party. His name is Mark Fancher.
Revolutionary greetings. And let me first start and express to you on behalf of the All-African People's Revolutionary Party our gratitude. We thank you and we congratulate you for coming out and struggling for your people on a Saturday when you could be doing so many other things. The struggle of our people is critical, and the All-African People's Revolutionary Party takes that struggle very seriously, and it has since its founding. Each year, the All-African People's Revolutionary Party participates in mobilizing and organizing people for African Liberation Day, not just here in this room full of people, but with African people all over the world. You begin to realize the impact and the power of African Liberation Day when you reflect on the fact that at this very moment, there are Africans who are mobilizing and struggling and manifesting in South Africa for African Liberation Day. In Guinea-Bissau at this moment, there are thousands of Africans in the streets manifesting for African Liberation Day. If you go to Tanzania, African Liberation Day. If you go to Jamaica, African Liberation Day. If you go to England, African Liberation Day. If you go to France, African Liberation Day. If you go to Colombia, African Liberation Day. If you go to the Caribbean, any place in the Caribbean, African Liberation Day. If you go to New York, African Liberation Day. In Baltimore, African Liberation Day. In Atlanta, African Liberation Day. In Sacramento, California, African Liberation Day. Oakland, California, African Liberation Day. And here in Chicago, African Liberation Day. That means that thousands and thousands of African people around the world understand the imperative of Pan-Africanism, which is the objective of the All-African People's Revolutionary Party. The fact that this is happening at the same time is a testament to the level of organization that our people are capable of. Because as much energy, as much focus, as much attention, as much energy is devoted to organizing this event, it is required in every single ALD manifestation you find throughout the world. And if Africans can organize African Liberation Day in every corner of the world, we can organize revolution in every corner of the world and get what we want. It's a very scientific process, and the All-African People's Revolutionary Party puts great thought into every African Liberation Day that it organizes. And it is for that reason that it has chosen the theme that it has chosen for this year, which is Revolutionary Pan-Africanism calls us to unite and forge a definitive struggle against neocolonialism forward to one unified socialist Africa. Boy, you go to our people and you say that and they say, I don't know what he's talking about, but boy, it's deep. We have to do this because we are scientific about our struggle. We have to be very precise in our language. We have to make sure that technically what we're calling for is correct. But we also understand that forced upon us because of these circumstances is the need for us to go to the masses of our people and to explain exactly what it is that we're saying. And if you go to the masses of our people, if you go to anybody and you explain, if you're patient with them, if you take time with them and you explain to them what it is that you're talking about, then our people understand it. And not only do they understand it, they will give it back to you in a way that's even more clear than you gave it to them. If you go to your Aunt Maybelle and you spend time explaining this to her, she'll say, yeah, baby, I know what you're saying. You're saying that everybody my color ain't my kind. That's the power of our people. They're brilliant. They understand everything and they conceptualize everything and they're able to understand it. But the task before us is to organize and to make sure that they understand it. Our focus this year on neocolonialism, everybody our color ain't our kind, has to do with the fact that neocolonialism stands as our great obstacle to the destruction of imperialism. It is the final stage of it. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to achieve Pan-Africanism, one united socialist Africa. We want to liberate Africa first because Africa, from Cape to Cairo, is controlled and dominated by foreign interests, foreign forces that exploit and oppress Africa. And even though it doesn't look like they're the ones who are doing it, they're the ones who are doing it because the people who have been set up, the people who are standing as puppets and lackeys of imperialism are running Africa on behalf of people who do not look like us. We have big questions when we look at this. We say, what happened to Africa? Because if you know anything about it, we could spend 3, 5, 6 weeks talking about Africa's greatness at one time. Greece, ancient Greece, which imperialists and Western powers always point to as the foundation of European culture and the beginning of civilization, the Greeks, if you look at their ancient writings, talked about Africa in glowing terms. There is a book called Black Athena written by Martin Bernal, who talks about how the Greeks regarded Africans as geniuses and talked about it openly. But something happened to us. What happened to us is that Europe went into Africa, and as John Henry Clark says, it's typical of Europe. When they see something that they like, they don't say, well, can we share in that? They say, no, we'll take it all.
That's right.
And they took Africa. And when they saw that they were fighting each other trying to get control of Africa, they said, hey, wait a minute, good white brothers. Let's come to Berlin and sit down around the table at the latter part of 1884. And let's carve Africa up. You can take this part. You can take that part. We'll take that part. And we'll dominate Africa to our mutual benefit. They went in with guns. They went in with cannons. They went in with every form of weaponry in order to subdue Africa and to play upon the divisions that were already there and the lack of ignorance, the ignorance and the lack of a worldview that existed in Africa in order to exploit and dominate Africa. But Africans are not stupid. Africans have an instinctive love of justice, and from the very moment that they began to try and dominate Africa, Africans began to resist and they fought back. They fought back successfully, so that by the late 1950s, we began to see colonialism begin to fall. When Ghana became liberated, it was an inspiration to the rest of Africa. Not long after that, Congo was liberated, and it is in Congo that we gain our greatest lessons about neocolonialism. Because Patrice Lumumba, the first prime minister of Congo, began immediately to talk about the need for Africa to be truly liberated. He said that the long history of the domination of Congo, which is perhaps the richest piece of real estate in Africa, if not the world, had to end. And that the power, the wealth of the Congo had to be restored to the people of Congo. And when he began to say that, the flags went up all over the imperialist world. There are transcripts of a conversation that was had between former President Dwight Eisenhower and Allen Dulles, the head of the Central Intelligence Agency, where they spoke in open terms about the need for Patrice Lumumba to be assassinated. In fact, President Eisenhower gave Dulles the order to develop a plan for the assassination of Patrice Lumumba. And what he did is that Allen Dulles went and developed a plan that they would put poison in Patrice Lumumba's toothpaste and get a CIA agent close enough to him so that he would be poisoned. But he didn't need to do that because there were these African stooges who were already in place, who were looking to take his place, who took Lumumba out and assassinated him brutally. One of the people who was the mastermind of this plan was a man who at the time was named Joseph Mobutu, who later changed his name to Mobutu Sese Seko, and once he assumed power in the Congo with the assistance of the CIA and Western forces, became one of the most brutal, bloodthirsty tyrants ever to walk the face of the earth. Ever to walk the face of the earth. In fact, you know about the rumble in the jungle, the fight between Muhammad Ali, that took place in a major stadium. Underneath that stadium were people who were imprisoned and dead bodies of people who were victims of Mobutu. And the struggle against Mobutu went on for many, many years, but before it was finished, he had robbed Congo blind. He had millions and millions of dollars socked away in overseas bank accounts. He had killed and tortured countless people in Congo who had resisted him. And the struggle for Congo is one which goes on now because it is a piece of real estate that imperialism refuses to relinquish. It has done everything to create confusion in the Congo. It has fomented all kinds of disturbances and conflicts between neighboring countries and people from other populations there. It has created confusion with respect to current leadership and the elections there. It goes on. And so we must understand that in this way, when they have people who look like us, who are presiding over countries that are nominally independent, imperialism and colonialism remain in place, and Africa is no closer to being free than it ever was. But we can't be fooled, because the imperialists are always thinking 3 and 4 steps ahead. They understand that we grow in our level of consciousness, and they begin to understand that when they have someone who is as brutal as Mobutu, who is standing as their caretaker of their property as they see it, that eventually if he is as tyrannical, as brutal as he is, then the people will wake up faster. And so they allow other people to step in who are nicer, who have a better and more calm profile. People who seem to be more caring and more concerned about the African masses. But make no mistake about it, these people still function as neo-colonial puppets and continue to allow the imperialists to rob Africa blind. We have to be conscious of these things. We have to understand it, because the concept of neo-colonialism is one that's not limited just to Africa. Sometimes it happens right here in the United States when you have a president who looks like you, but who is responsible for more drone attacks and deaths in Africa that killed civilians than anybody in the history of this world. And our people are fooled. They fall in love with him because he's charismatic, because he's got a beautiful family, and they fall all over him. And if you say anything against him, they're ready to kill you. This is confusion. We must understand that people must be judged by their actions and their deeds rather than by the way that they talk to us. And this is why understanding neo-colonialism is so important. It's so critical and it's so vital. Okay? So as we move forward, we encourage you to learn more about what's happening and to understand the various manifestations of neocolonialism. Neocolonialism isn't always in the form of a bloodthirsty tyrant who is ugly just to look at him. Sometimes it has its functions by way of the militarization of Africa, the creation of entities like U.S. Africa Command or AFRICOM, where they will put U.S. soldiers in every single country in Africa except for a few, for the purpose of having African soldiers do the work of the United States of America. We must understand this, and so sometimes chickens come home to roost. You know, you see what happened in Niger just a couple of years ago, when in Niger, in a little town called Arlit, where the French maintain a massive uranium mining operation, and where the French have military implanted and embedded in that country, presumably for the purpose of fighting terrorism, but it's really for the purpose of protecting their uranium mining operations. It is in Niger where U.S. imperialism sought to make common cause with French imperialism, and they put AFRICOM and U.S. soldiers into Niger. And then 4 U.S. soldiers managed to find themselves in a place where they should not have been because the people in Niger understand the deal and were resisting, and they lost their lives. I mean, so secret is this operation that even people in the U.S. Congress were like, we in Niger? We didn't even know we was there. They are there. They're not only in Niger, they're in every country in Africa just about. The U.S. military is serious about maintaining control of Africa and its resources. But let me assure you, the All-African People's Revolutionary Party is just as serious about driving them out. So in conclusion, let me say that while we congratulate you for coming here to African Liberation Day, because you deserve congratulations for participating in this struggle on this day, we also implore, we urge and try and prevail upon you to let this not just be the one day that you are active and that you struggle. That you should make every day African Liberation Day, that every single day of the year you're fighting for your people in one form or another, and it must be within the construct of an organization. If you don't want to join the All-African People's Revolutionary Party, and we want you to join the All-African People's Revolutionary Party. We're very few in number, but we do a lot, all right?
Absolutely.
But we need more. We know how much more we could do if we had more of you, okay? But if you don't join us, then join some other organization that is fighting desperately for the freedom of our people. The struggle is long, the struggle is hard, but the one thing that we do know is that victory is certain. Thank you very much.
RedHotRadio.fm. www.redhotradio.fm